Facilities that make this program possible are provided by the City of Highland Park. Programs are produced independently by members of the community. The City of Highland Park is not affiliated with the following program or the producers of public access programming and is not responsible for the content. The following program does not reflect the opinions of the City of Highland Park.
Hello and welcome to Cahnmanns Current Events Roundtable. Today we have two really interesting guests, and I think you're going to find them extremely fascinating because we're going to be talking about socialism. One of my guests is for socialism and the other one is against socialism. And my first guest is Hospitales, and who is a writer, photographer. Welcome.
Yes.
Welcome to our show, Jesus. And my other guest is welcome back, Joe Kopsick, who is our lecturer and author. He wrote how many books already?
2 so far.
2 so far, at such a young age, and I would imagine that's one of his. Welcome to the show,
Thank you.
Joe. I just want to read one thing to let you know what's going on in Venezuela. The Venezuela crisis today is the result of corrupt government and false promises that have created a climate of extreme dependence on the government. With people totally dependent on the government, Chavez and now Maduro could manipulate people as they wanted, keeping a lid on the social unrest but destroying human dignity. Venezuela needs new ways of thinking to restore democracy. It needs a new generation of political leaders with strong moral character who understand how socialism corrodes and corrupts human dignity. That is an opening that I wanted to get to, and I'm going to start with Jesus about Venezuela, because I remember Venezuela being a very wealthy, I mean, your oil was even more so than Saudi Arabia, and now people are starving in Venezuela. And I'm glad that you came in from Venezuela, and you're doing my show today. I'm very honored to have gotten you. I'm so happy that you got here. So maybe you could talk a little bit how was it ruined or destroyed? How socialism, what happened there?
Well, I think that everything started, in my opinion, several years ago, about 20 or 30 years ago, when people start buying, right, the proposal of the politics, of the politician, about getting free stuff, about, hey, you're working, you're not owning this or that, maybe we can make it better, we can have better benefits for you. And they were starting offering this free stuff to the people, but they didn't talk about how to get it. Good? So people start buying these ideas and these proposals without the knowledge or without knowing what were they buying, in fact. So we got into this modern socialism, who is called in Venezuela socialism of the 21st century, yes, and it was divided by stages, different stages. Right now we are in the final stage of the socialism in Venezuela, where it is perfectly performed. The socialism is perfectly performed right now in Venezuela. And let me tell you something, without hope to coming back to another different system, because the government now owns the company, the private companies, and all the sources of production, food, oil, etc.
Then what, if the government does all this, why are people starving? I understand there's no medicines,
Yes.
the hospitals don't have medicines there, the people don't have food. I mean, if the government owns all this and people, are so happy to have socialism, why are they starving?
Good question. Listen, when the companies are on private hands, private owners, yes, they are interested in get some profit of the business, right? So under the socialist ideology, onto the workers, handled by the government, not by the private sector of 2 or 3 owners, private owners. So what really option brought from the center of these companies, because the government is not interested in the profit. They are just interested in the political project. But what happened? The political project is implied or is attached to the economics of the country. So they need more production, but they are not able to make more production of these companies. So at this point, the Venezuelan government is just buying food from other countries, their own food, as it used to be years ago. But nobody's doing this because they're not interested in the profit, because that's a socialist project.
I see. So, Joe, you hear, we just heard Jesus talk about the people. In the beginning, everybody was so happy to have socialism, and now their country is starving because there's no trade. People aren't getting medicines. People are in the hospital, medical care, because there's no medicines to help them. It's very, very sad. But what happened if socialism? Could that happen if we got it here in the United States? How could socialism be different than what's happening in Venezuela? And why did it happen? I know you're for socialism, but you hear what happened to his country. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think if America tried socialism, are near as dangerous as when poor and non-industrialized countries like Venezuela try it, because America has so much wealth, it has so much capacity to produce. It also has so much capacity to destroy what it's produced, and prices aren't really allowed to fall to the point where people can afford them, and that's part of why that's what's happening in Venezuela and why people are having difficulty getting enough food. And part of the reason why there's not enough food for all the people in the country is several reasons. First of all, there was a civil war a few decades ago between Colombia and Venezuela, and 7 million people went into Venezuela, so the population went up a lot. And also, the government was spending on social welfare as if it had infinite oil wealth coming to it. So the bubble burst, and oil prices went down 70% the year after Chavez died. And also they tried to impose price controls on foods, and some people argue that international food sellers are not lowering their prices enough so that people can afford it. And because of those price controls and rash characteristic of authoritarian socialist regimes, you'll see a black market emerge and smuggling to get food out of that country, because people can sell food in neighboring countries and get more money for them because they don't have the same price controls as Venezuela has.
Do you see that Venezuela was a failed socialist experiment?
It's not a fair experiment. Let me tell you something. You had different stages of socialism. Socialism doesn't happen from one day to another. It had different stages. First, the promises. And playing with the people's necessity, yes. First, the promises. We need better healthcare. We need this, we need that. We need cheaper food. We need cheap this, cheap that.
Does this sound like in the United States? We want better health care?
Yes.
I hear some stuff that they're asking for in the United States.
Yes, but somebody has to pay for that, The project itself put their hands on the profit, on the money of the wealthiest people. of the corporations, of the millionaires, of the billionaires. And
So there's somebody getting rich in Venezuela.
yes, a lot of people.
So there are people, so it's like people are starving or people are very well-to-do.
Yes, of course. And you need poor people to feed the system. Socialism is about helping the poor people. So when you need poor people to feed the system, socialism is not interested in get you or the people out of poverty. That's not part of the project of the socialism. So you need people who actually depends on the government, depends on the welfare, depends on the health, for food, for medicine, for almost everything. So in Venezuela, it's perfectly imposed, the socialism. It failed, yes, for the people, but it doesn't fail for the government.
So the government always makes out, excuse me, the government always makes out well, right? In socialism, what do you think, Joe? Do you think that, how could socialism, do you see socialism coming in the United States?
I think the most likely way.
Because we have new candidates now that are pro-socialists, like Cortez
Right.
and Bernie Sanders, and that whole group that wants to, have socialism.
Yeah,
And
they're the farthest left-wing Democrats, or they're progressive Democrats. They're definitely influenced by socialism. I would say the only chance America has at becoming socialist in the next 10 years is if, say, Bernie Sanders became president and you made someone like Sherrod Brown from Ohio, like labor secretary, and made serious gains in, what workers are allowed to bargain for, and, maybe get rid of Taft-Hartley and make it possible for people to have as meaningful boycotts and strikes that they right now have to ask for permission for. See, we're afraid of socialism, but we won't let private sector unions function the way they're supposed to. We've illegalized most of their activities.
because unions used to be very time, everybody belonged to a union, and now you don't have to belong to a union. You could work and not belong to a union. So you're for unions, correct?
Well, it's difficult to say because I'm in a position where I'm kind of between. So I'm not a supporter of Trump. So right now I think there's a lot of free market and socialist ideas that could both lead us to a better economic system. So it's really difficult to answer.
What is socialism? Because a lot of people are afraid that once you have a socialist country, then you eventually will go into communism.
Well, Marx and Lenin and their followers believe that socialism is supposed to lead to communism, and Nikita Khrushchev took over after Stalin. He said that we will feed Americans little bits of socialism until they wake up and find that they have communism. There are a few socialists who don't want it. Socialism means, strictly, the definition is social or worker ownership or control or management of the means of production, which is factories and workplaces and maybe farms. Large machines, tools, and for a socialist regime to turn into a communist one, it would need to get rid of its markets, its money and currency, and its borders.
Now, as far as Venezuela, that it became, is it a socialist country? Did it become communist? What do you see, and what do you see happening in Venezuela? What do you think is going to happen to that country?
Okay, you have to check California, and you check all the taxes that the people have, all the tents, camps, the people living in tents over there. You have to check California. Apply it to the whole country. That's socialism, basically. So, socialism is, you can divide socialism and communism. It's the same. Fidel Castro said, he was interviewed one time. You can look it on YouTube, it's public. He was asked, what's socialism? Well, socialism is communism, easily. But when you read what's communism, you need different stages, as I told you before. You need promises, you need to take control over all productive companies, and then what happens? When people start starving, when you don't have enough food for all the people, when people rather depend on the government than working, people will be mad. You will get riots on the street. And guess what? The government won't take it back. The government won't say, okay, we are sorry, socialism is not the way, we're going back. No, they have to move into communism, take control over the elections, take control over the protesters on the street, no riots. If you want to survive in that country, you need to belong to the government or be pro-government, pro-socialism, to have your food stamps or food card or pro-government card to go to buy groceries, to go to buy medicines. Socialism is communism. It's the same.
So it is the same in the Wall Street Journal, and it said, and it was in October of 2018, which is now, it says, Cuba holds the keys to Venezuela. Venezuela is now a wholly owned subsidiary of Cuba's 59-year-old military dictatorship. Without the full support of Cuba, sophisticated intelligence and advanced police state methods, Venezuela will have been overthrown years ago. So Cuba holds the keys to Venezuela.
Cuba holds it. When the Soviet Union fell apart because of socialism, communism, their best partner, Fidel Castro in Cuba. Okay, the Soviets and the socialism there died. You know what he did? He flew. He had this meeting in Brazil with all the communist people in Latin America. Okay, we need money. And guess what? That's why Chavez was born in that moment. So they said, okay, we need the oil and the money from the oil from Venezuela to continue with our project. And they put the president in Venezuela, they put the president in Bolivia, they put the president in Ecuador, they put the president in all of these places. Nicaragua, what's happening? What's happening right now in Nicaragua? What's happening in Bolivia? Evo Morales is trying to run for the third or fourth time for president. So, what's happening right now in Mexico?
Yeah, we have a new they have a new
They
president.
have a new president in Mexico who is pro-socialism. He's very friend of Maduro, and he supports that project.
I hope that Mexico doesn't become another Venezuela.
Yes.
And then we talk about in the United States why socialism possibly won't work for us because you're not entitled to other people's money. The top 1% of the nation already pay 50% of giving us millions and millions, but we still rack up huge deficits. Liberal college students want tax the rich, but what makes people entitled to the wealthy's money? People work hard for their money. There's, in fact, I have right here, it said, taking hard-earned money away from people paying it is not morally right. You would be taking away money from small business owners, the person that worked their way up through the ranks, the average citizen who works so hard to earn their revenue. It's not easy to tax the rich. The person with a lower income is not entitled to another person's money. And what do you feel about that?
Well, to defend social, should we be rewarding people who rise up through the ranks? It's like, who are they rising over? And that's why socialists support egalitarianism in the workplace and what's called horizontality, eliminating the needs for bosses whenever we can, and using profit to reinvesting that profit into the company to develop it and to give rewards to workers and consumers. So I disagree with the idea that you can just keep adding social welfare spending and public works until you have socialism. I think it takes something a lot more, concerted effort and a lot more focused effort, like organized boycotts, almost a revolution. I think we wouldn't know if we lived in a socialist country. I don't think we're quite there. I don't even think 8 years of a Bernie Sanders presidency would bring us all the way there. But to speak to the issue of people being entitled to other people's money, you could say that, but on the other hand, businesses if they turn a profit, they're supposed to pay taxes. If they don't want to pay taxes, they can operate on a non-for-profit basis. They don't have to pay any taxes at all. But if they're receiving any form of taxpayer subsidies, they're kind of participants in a rigged market. They have an unfair advantage, and it's that deprivation of opportunity that they do to other people when they get things like business licenses and intellectual property rights, things that taxpayers have to pay for. and that is used to take away opportunity from the ordinary person who might go into competition against them, but have so many regulations and taxations and barriers to contend with in that process.
Do you think that there was something that was in that same Wall Street Journal that I was looking at? It says, "Open the door to Venezuelan migrants." Do you think that we should be, we have now the caravans of people coming in from the 3 different countries. They're coming in from El Salvador, Honduras, and
Mexico.
And well, Mexico is not as many, but the other countries.
Honduras, El Salvador.
Yeah, Honduras.
Central
yes.
America.
There's not as many people from Mexico coming in, because right now Mexico, they're building, and there's a lot of jobs still they're opening in Mexico. With all these caravans, the people are coming out of all these countries. There's also starving, and then they're at the Mexican border. I mean, we can't possibly open our door to every country coming into the United States.
Good.
How should we be fixing? Should we be helping people? Should we be helping the people? Helping people stay in their countries by services that maybe us, the United States, United Nations, other people from other countries can really help people stay in their own country rather than coming over the border, which, it's going to be very hard. Language is different. Everything's different, where they feel at home in their own country. What can we do? Let's start with Venezuela. What can we do?
Okay. To feed socialism, you need poor people. Venezuela, from Honduras, El Salvador, Nicaragua.
Yes.
Yes, that's poor people. So basically,
but they're not all poor. There's some people that are
there's
coming
some people,
for
of course,
economy.
of course. Not a lot of them comes, naked, without clothing or without money.
Clothing,
yes. But that's from here. I honestly believe socialism here is going to happen. There's no way you could stop socialism here.
According to Joe, they're coming.
No, it's coming. It's coming. That's coming here. So you need to impose or to promote socialism here, because you need poor people. Most of them, of course, they are not poor, but some of them are, and you need that people to feed the socialism here. Yes.
So that's why they want the people to come in here.
That's why.
In this country here, because it would help feed into the program.
That's the way to justify socialism.
So do you see the same thing, Joe?
Not quite. I think we would have a much easier time accommodating any kind of immigrants, socialist or not, into this country if we would just get our budget and our taxes under control, stop taxing productive activity, have things like a balanced budget amendment, or at least pay as you go. And yeah, if we could get our budgets and taxes under control, then our bond rating would improve, and other countries would start investing in us and believing in us again, and we'd have, why don't we settle some of this land out west? And there's so much we could do with the resources we have. We just kind of don't use them.
And I want to ask you, Jesus, you came into our country. How did you manage to get here? And what do you think of our country, and what do you see happening for yourself?
Okay, I arrived here because I was a protester in Venezuela against the socialism. Mm-hmm. Literally, they arrived to my house and we assault rifles, trying to look for me. I wasn't at home by that moment. So 2 or 3 days ago, I took a plane here. My sister is living in Miami.
How long ago?
It was in March,
okay.
7, 8 months ago. And my life was at risk by that time. 2017.
Is your family at risk in Venezuela?
For sure, they're at risk. But they keep like a low profile, stay at home, just going out to buy food, the necessary, and that's it. In the meantime, this socialism it ends in Venezuela, if it has an end, So here, I feel the politics here very challenging. It's very complex. It's not dark or black and white, or Here, you have to find a point in the middle, because you have several corporations here that are huge. The economy here is huge. It's the most powerful economy in the world. So, if you bring socialism here, you can't there's no possible way you can take control over those companies and corporations and give it to the workers. That's not going to happen. The country will be a mess.
So you don't see that happening here?
I don't see that happening.
Not now?
Not now, not
But
now.
possibly.
Possibly. But as I said, I'm not black or white. I support like a participation stocks some kind of or benefit into the profits of the companies, because the companies work because of the workers.
They didn't have that in Venezuela. You know, like you said earlier when we were at the Bluegrass earlier for delicious meals, you said that that's what we need to do. That people need to have a stake in their company.
Yeah, you know, in 2016, the businesses should, quote, align profits with most businesses, have them have employee stock ownership plans, ESOPs, and give workers a realistic chance to, you know, buy out their workplace and start their own franchise, maybe even a cooperative franchise, hopefully. And then we have more cooperative ownership, but still retain a market system. That's a way to, you know, keep a market and keep quote unquote capitalism, but still have kind of socialist elements. Not even really socialist, it would be kind of a private socialism that's voluntary. Exactly. And I think also a move towards decentralization and away from this time approach to solving economic issues that socialists, but also non-socialists take, like you know, rationing and quota systems. That's something I'd like to see Venezuela, you know, turn away from, because that's what caused the destruction of the Soviet Union. They had too tight controls on economics, and you know, it grew a robust black market that had to compete with production lines against the government.
Well, you know, this is very, you know, I'm glad that our viewers got to hear this, because, you know, we never get to hear, you know, our own politics, or hear what's really happening in other countries that can possibly happen in our own country. Yes. We're kind of narrow-minded, you know, we're kind of like isolationists in the United States, and we only know what's happening, you know, because our news, most of our news is only about ourselves. We never get to hear what's really happening in other countries. We kind of skim it, you know. Like we know that France is having protests right now, and this one's having protests, but we never really. Yeah, and I think our viewers really got to hear what, you know, what the real reason that this happens to our country, like how socialism destroyed Venezuela. I want to thank both of you, Joe, and again,
thank you.
Jesus. You guys were terrific. I'm going to invite you back. We'll do a second show because there's so much to cover on this topic. We're just skimming it, but I think it's a wonderful, it was a way to open people's minds to hear what's really happening in the world, and what's happening to countries that are not really that far away from us. I mean, glad that you got here safely. You should remain safely, and hopefully you'll become a citizen of the United States. And Joe, thank you for coming again. And you're always a great guest.